Silk Printing Part 3, an in-depth look at some advanced settings and some tips and tricks that'll help you take your silk printing to the next level. It's in today's video and it's coming up next. Alright, what's up everyone? Back at it again. It is DW Darkwing Dad, and today I'm bringing you Silk Printing Part 3. So this is the final culmination from my previous videos of Silk Printing Part 1 and Silk Printing Part 2. I got a lot of great feedback, a lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of me answering questions. And that's the reason for this video, obviously 1 and 2, where I kind of introduced you into silk printing and then gave you a little bit more in-depth tips and tricks. This video here is going to take it to the next level. So this video is going to contain some advanced settings that you've probably never used or may not know what they are, but that's okay because I'm going to explain them. I also have some tips as far as positioning, supports, cooling, basically things that I did not cover in Part 1 and Part 2, more of an in-depth and an advanced level. I've also listened to your guys' requests, so make sure you watch to the end of the video and you can see how you can save and upload personalized DW Silk profiles to help you out in your 3D printing. I've got a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm not going to wait any longer. It's Silk Printing Part 3. Let's go. First thing we're going to talk about here is monotonic settings. These are something you probably don't have as default, and you will see under the top and bottom options, it brings up monotonic top-bottom order, monotonic ironing order. What it's going to do by enabling this is going to print your top and bottom layers in a specific order to where they are always printing in the same direction. They're basically not cross-hatching or crisscrossing each other. Now, very similar to monotonic ironing order, it is basically going to do the ironing in a single direction. So this is very key. You don't enable these and you're doing certain silk printings, you may notice that on your top layers that you have almost like a checkerboard pattern. These are the same pieces, one's just a little bit bigger than the other. I printed both of these with all the same settings, the same temperature, the same filament. The one on the right, I did not enable any monotonic options. The one on the left, I did. So looking at the one on the right, you can see it's still pretty good results. You can see that checkerboard pattern because when it did both the top and bottom layers and the ironing, it wasn't going in a single direction. So it doesn't look bad, but now look at the piece on the left here and it looks substantially better because it's going in a single direction. It's smoothing it out. It's not overlapping. It's not causing a pattern. Looks really, really great. Definitely a nice setting that can give you night and day results. Both of these options here are going to work best when we have ironing enabled. We want to make sure that we have combing mode not in skin. This is very important because we don't want any combing to happen within the skin, which is the outermost layer of the print. That could result in patterning or scaling, or sometimes you just get those funky kind of waves in the print. It'll reduce and eliminate that. We also want to make sure that we have Z-hop when retracted. So when a retraction does occur, it is lifting that nozzle up. It's not dragging it across the print, especially on top layers. If your retraction isn't on point, result in those impurities in the print. That's just not going to make it look as good as you can. So I highly recommend using those. The only downside to these is they are going to add a little bit of time, but you can see here from the comparison, these are just some earpieces from an Iron Man helmet. It really takes it to the next level. Even if you were sanding these, it's going to cut down a ton on sanding on those top layers. So really cool setting. Definitely something I recommend. Definitely going to help improve the quality of your 3D prints and help you take your prints to the next level. Okay, so now the next setting I'm going to talk about is adaptive layers. And basically what adaptive layers is going to do is Cura is going to take the model and analyze it and optimize it to change the layer height of certain areas of the model that need it the most. So when you use adaptive layers, big open areas, maybe such as this flat side here, maybe the top of the nose, those are still going to print at a 0.2 layer height. But with adaptive layers, when you select it, Cura is going to analyze it and change the layer height by increments of 0.04 to give you more definition, to maximize the quality and give you the best finish possible. Understand that adaptive layers is going to strategically change certain layer heights in the area by increments of 0.04. That's very important when you're using a Creality machine because we know that that magic number with Creality is 4. Understand that it is only going to lower the layer height, is not going to increase it. So don't think in certain areas it's going to randomly start printing it at a 0.5 0.04 layer height. It will not go any higher than 0.2. It will not go any lower than 0.04. 0.04 is the default. The only thing that I change is the topography size to 0.16. At default, it comes at 0.2. What that's going to do is horizontally make the distance in between the layers a little bit tighter. So again, we're making it more crisp, giving it a better quality. It is going to increase your print time. So we can see here on this Ninja Turtle bust, we have a print time of 23 hours and 32 minutes. Same exact model in the same position without using adaptive layers. You can see that we're at 19 hours, 23 minutes. So now that I've explained that setting, let me actually show you the difference when using and not using adaptive layers on a recent print that I did. So these are obviously two Jason masks. These were both printed at 0.2 layer height. However, this one I did not use adaptive layers, and this one I did, and I wanted to show you the difference. Last video where I took a Jason mask and I was adding some fine to mention about the bottom chin area. Basically default settings, and again, we did use combing, not in skin with ironing, but it still had, you know, this stepping motion. Not using adaptive layers, it doesn't look terrible, but it could look better. This mask here, where I use adaptive layers, you can see how less visible it is. Side by side, you can actually see how much better it really looks. So again, when we're printing in silk, we don't want to have to do any sanding. So doing something like using adaptive layers, it can help minimize where the print ends or certain overhangs or things like that. Another area here is there's a ton of detail in these eyes, and you can see on these overhangs here how the layer lines are substantially more recognizable. We use adaptive layers, not as much. You can see how they're tighter and they just look a lot more clean and crisp. You can definitely see them a lot more than if you're looking at this right here. We changed that final topography setting to a 0.16, and you can go even lower, but by changing it to a 0.16 in conjunction with the adaptive layers computing and changing that down to as low as a 0.04, it left us with a lot better definition and a lot cleaner of a model. So nice little setting to initiate if you're trying to get a cleaner, crisper result in your 3D prints. This setting is really going to come full circle if you use some of the other settings that I have mentioned in my previous videos. One being ironing, two being using combing mode and the feature not in skin, and 3 using Z-Hop. The trifecta of those is going to give you nice, clean, detailed prints time and time again. Now that I've touched on that, let me give you a couple other tips and tricks. Now let's talk a little bit more about positioning your 3D print in referencing to cooling when using silk filaments. So positioning and cooling, this is very, very important. So this is a 3D print that didn't quite make it. This was one of the silk prints I was doing when the lightning storm hit. Depending on what printer that you are using, you may have a single fan or a dual fan. There are more and more 3D printers that are starting to have the dual fans on both sides, but this particular printer does not. So positioning is super, super important. So a lot of times people, they'll put a print on a build plate like this. They think it's the best way, but it really isn't. Silk filaments in particular need more cooling. One, because we are running a little bit higher of a temperature, but two, they have those elastomers, which when they are heated, they stretch, they need to be cooled down rapidly. Not giving them adequate cooling can be detrimental to your prints. Take for instance, this CR10 Mini, this only has one fan. This is not the way you want to position it. When this guy is printing here, the fan is gonna come out, it's gonna cool all of this really well. But as this slides over here, all the air is going to blow on the inside of the wall and potentially cause this to sag, banding, and just, it's not going to cool as quick as we need it. So you're going to get impurities within the print. You can definitely do things like upgrade your fan, which is something what I did with this. I went with the upgraded Winston fan. But if you don't want to go ahead and do anything like, you know, print the extra fan ducts and do all the rewiring and everything. And all I did with this is upgrade the fan, and I'm still able to get really, really good print quality. And the way you want to position this is to where the fan is going to be blowing uniformly on the 3D print. So in a position like this, it's going to blow on the outside edge. When we come here, all of the cooling ability is going to come right here, which is the most important thing. And you know, when you upgrade your fan, there's going to be a number of benefits from it. One, it's going to give you better cooling. Two, it's going to give you more efficient cooling. It's going to reduce sound, and obviously 4, it's going to improve your overall print quality. Now you can go as far as even print the new fan ducts. There are a lot of ducts that you can find free on Thingiverse where they come down.
I never got around to doing it on this particular Creality machine. I started not to use it as much. Obviously, channeling, that fan duct in conjunction with a better fan is going to give you a lot better results.
So this is just a quick example of how your model can look when you have it properly positioned, and maybe do some fan upgrades here. This is my Kang helmet. This was printed upside down. That's why that putty is on the top there, but oriented just like this, the same way I spoke of as the Doom mask, where it's cooling on the outside. This was printed on my Ender 5 Plus. Those of you that have it know it has a single fan duct. All I did was did the Winston fan and the duct upgrade. Printed at a 0.28 layer height. Still gave me really, really great results. I used a lot of the settings on this helmet that I spoke of in this video. So again, with the right position, the right settings, the proper cooling, you can get an awesome result.
Better cooling is going to give you obviously a better finished result in the print. It's also going to allow better removal for things like your supports. Definitely a prime takeaway and something that is essential to getting a quality silk print. Speaking of supports, let's talk about those next.
All right, supports. Obviously, we want to position the model when silk printing to where it is going to support the model where it is needed. I'm going to talk a little bit about normal supports, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about tree supports. My settings for supports, just normal supports, pretty standard. I like to keep my overhang around 67 degrees. I just go by default on zigzag. I've had really good luck with that. Support density. I feel a lot of people use way more density of the supports that they need, between 4 and 5%. Usually when I'm doing silk, I might bump it up to 5. A lot of the reason they come off so easy is because of these next couple settings I'm going to talk about here. The support line distance, that's basically the distance in between the zigzag pattern here. So if you spread that out really big, let's say you did something like 20, the lines are going to be spread way out and it's going to be very weak. 10 seems to work very well, and that's why we're able to lower that support density. So it's still firm, but it's not too firm. The most important thing is going to be support Z distance. A lot of people just keep this way too close. You don't want it too far away, because if it's printing something and it needs that support, you're going to get sagging, and we can't sand this, we can't fill these things. So I have found using a support Z distance of 0.24 is going to work the best. That support Z distance is the distance where the support ends and the model starts. The other thing that helps the supports come off of the model is the support distance priority. Going to prioritize the XY distance. The XY distance by default is 0.8. So it is going to actually make this 0.24 a little bit bigger. If you have a model that needs a little bit more support, you may want to drop that down to the default setting of 0.2. But like I said, in that last slide, my Doom mask, it was a 0.24, and the XY overrides Z, and they pop off real easy. If you want it completely accurate, let's say you want a 0.24, just change this to a Z overrides XY. That way we're going to have a true 0.24 distance. I've used some other settings where I've changed this to Z overrides XY, and I've had it at 0.28, and it pops off very similar to what I showed you in the last slides. I do not use enabling support interfaces. A lot of the times on silk prints, it does actually chew the model up a little bit more. So now let's shift pace and talk a little bit more about tree supports. All right, so as we know, supports are very, very important. They are critical in silk printing, because if anything messes up like an overhang or something like Hulk on the chin area, we're not able just to sand that, fill that, and paint it. It's pretty much a one and done shot. Normal supports we're all pretty familiar with. They're either going to build off of the build plate, or in this case, to support this chin here, we're going to have to do placement, which is called everywhere. It can be a nice feature on certain models, but something like busts or very intricate models, they're not going to be that great. And the reason being is they're actually going to build off of the model, not off just the build plate. So if something happens where maybe this fails, or just removing it, it could damage the silk print, which we don't want. And something like here with all of these supports, they could very easily, when we take them off, damage one of these teeth or claws, whatever these are, or just leave remnants behind that we're not going to be able to, sand and paint and fill. So we have to support the chin and the mouth here, but we have to find another way to do it. Now, it's not to say that supports being placed everywhere can't be used with the right model. A perfect example would be a Mortal Kombat mask. So I did try tree supports, and unfortunately it was just too hard to get it dialed in. There were areas that weren't properly being supported. So I went ahead and did an everywhere placement, and this worked out great. It did consume a little bit more time. It did consume a little bit more filament. You can see here from the finished part of the mask, this is just silk printed. It has some vinyl on it. It gives it a cool effect. All of those overhangs, those concaves, those inner cavities were all supported. They came out great. Biggest thing with this, it's all inside the mask, not on the outside. So if something failed or something, was hard to get off, it's not going to damage the outside. It's going to be on the inside, which no one's really going to see. Now, that is completely different than when we're talking tree support. So real quick with tree supports, basically, you have to tweak a lot of your settings, and one can be directly affected by adjusting of another. Your branch angle, and you want a medium angle. You don't want something too low, because if you have something too low, like this is set at 20, it's going to give you more vertical. So the lower it is, basically the more vertical points it's going to touch. It's not bad, but you can see it's just supporting things that we don't necessarily need. Your branch distance is basically the lower it is, the more it's going to go out. It's going to touch more points at little spots. So again, it's something that we don't really need. If you make this higher, it is going to basically be wider left to right. Branch diameter is going to be the thinnest part of the branches that reach out and touch the model. Your diameter angle, that's more or less the thickness of the bottom of it. Something around a 0-degree angle is going to be more uniform, but you can see here we have it at 2.5. So they start at one size and they kind of morph into other. It's very hard to have a specific setting, but this one right here, it's not bad, but this angle of 20, it's just too low. We're creating supports that we don't need. That can be completely opposite if you go too high. You can see on this one with a 65 degree, and we've changed some of these settings from 1.5 and 2.5 to 2. We have all these, this is just not going to work well at all. We've changed the angle, so instead of it going vertical, it's now going left to right more. But all of this is just going to fail. This is just way too much stretching. And again, we're supporting things that we don't need. So my general settings for tree support are something similar to this. The main thing we needed is the chin and the mouth, which is supported here. We have under the shoulder, which is definitely an area we need to support. And more or less, the tree supports wrap around from the back and they come around to the front, and they're just supporting the things that we need. I get the best results with a tree support branch angle between 40 and 50, a tree support branch distance of 1 to 1.5, the tree support branch diameter at 2, and the tree support branch diameter angle at 2.5. So this is a really good basic starter setup for tree supports. You do have to mess with it, you do have to tweak some settings, but when you get these tree supports dialed in, you can really get some great results out of your silk prints. And a very important thing to remember, even when you are selecting tree supports, is all of those pre-existing settings that you selected on supports, overhang angle, your density, the top C, those are all going to carry over. So don't think that all these settings here that we initially set it, all of those carry over. So those aren't going to change. When you tweak one thing, it can change the littlest, tiniest thing. So a lot of times you do have to play with the model, slice it a couple times to really make sure and ensure you're getting all the support that you're needed without compromising too much time and too much filament. Overall, once you get used to tree supports, they're an essential part of not just silk printing, but printing in general. And definitely save a lot of time, save a lot of filament, and get a lot better quality out of your regular prints and your silk prints. Now that we've talked more about supports and I've given you a more in-depth look at silk printing, let's wrap this video up. All right, guys, well, there you have it. There is the video, an in-depth look at some settings that are really going to help elevate your silk printing and realistically just 3D printing in general. Understand that a lot of these settings can be used if you're using, PLA, PLA+, PETG. Obviously you're going to have to dial in a few more things. That could be a future video, but I really wanted to make sure that I had comparisons and just different models that showed you the examples, showed you guys all the ins and outs. It really helped me get such a great result. Using these settings are definitely going to help elevate your silk printing to the next level. There was a lot of trial and error when I was tweaking these, using these with other settings and pre-existing things that I had in my slicer. Use these settings, use these profiles. It is definitely going to help you step your game up in your silk printing. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, of course, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I know there is a lot covered in this video, so if you have any comments, questions, feedback, anything like that, go ahead and drop me a comment. If you want more of a one-on-one experience, the link for my Discord will be in there. It's definitely a growing Discord. We have a great group of guys. Everyone's there to help each other. So if you're looking for just a fun community, the link will be in my link tree. Go ahead, join the Discord and be a part of the DW crew. And of course, if you do enjoy all things 3D printing, cosplay, Marvel, Funko Pops, DIY, all the stuff we're doing on the channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button. I have what seems to be a never-ending list of videos on the horizon. I have more comparison test videos. I have more videos showing settings, tips and tricks with 3D printing, cosplay, painting, all kinds of stuff. So if you like any of that stuff, make sure to click the subscribe button, come back and see me. As mentioned, you guys asked and I delivered, so I went ahead and uploaded several different profiles on a Google Drive for you guys to go ahead and download and upload into your slicer. They are Cura profiles. The link is in the description. It is a public link, so you can click it. You can download all those files. Depending on your liking and your expectations, you can try any of those out. A lot of those settings that I talked about, the monotonic, the adaptive, things like coasting, they all add time. So yeah, you know, some of these prints that you see here behind me, you know, might have taken 16, 18 hours. Some of the bigger helmets here, yeah, they could take, you know, 1 to 2 days. They're more or less just a guide, to each their own, but I wanted to give that to you because I had so many people commenting and asking me, you know, how do I do this or what should I do that? So those are uploaded for you. I will say they are, as far as retraction and temperature goes, they are set up for Bowden and they are set up on the glass bed. So if you look at it, build plate temperature, I have around 56 degrees. The retraction is set specifically for Bowden. So if you have something like a direct drive and you have any questions on retraction, you're not sure, just go ahead and drop me a comment. I got your back. All right, well, that's pretty much it for Silk Printing Part 3. I want to thank each and every one of my subscribers and viewers for tuning into today's video and watching it. The likes, the comments, the feedback, it's all greatly appreciated, and it's what always motivates me to keep going and bring you videos like this time and time again. Well, that is a wrap. I am done. Make sure to give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment if you have any questions on the video, and make sure to click the subscribe button if you're not subscribed. And until next time, it's DW out. Cheers.